Several weeks ago, I woke up one morning to find that the Seattle Times had printed a front page story on the college program inside this prison. I'm speaking today as a college instructor and one who has taught for this program for the last 2 years, so you can imagine I was thrilled to see the article. And yet, I paused several times reading it. I shouldn't have been surprised, but in a story presumably devoted to a college program, the reporter repeatedly identified our students by their crimes. So-and-so, the one who back in 2004 did X, Y, and Z. Or so-and-so, the one who 12 years back was sentenced for this, that, and the other thing. Of course, within the form of the newspaper article, identifications are inevitable and inevitably short. But what I hope to show in the next few minutes is that in their incompleteness, they are also inevitably wrong. When I tell people that I teach college writing inside a women's prison, they inevitably believe that I teach prisoners. In one sense, this statement is not untrue, but I want to convince you that I actually teach college students, and that the most important thing about the women I teach is that I see them and they see themselves as students. As professors, we are misguided so long as we think of our students on the inside as fundamentally different than those on the outside. In fact, if we are truly committed to higher education, we must believe that any student is a student first. And it is the right of any student that we value her for how she studies, for how she thinks, for the way she articulates her arguments, for the strength of her written expression, for her willingness to keep questioning, her willingness to go back to the text, to reread, to rethink, and rewrite. So now you understand that when I tell someone where I teach, and the conversation veers toward what did they do, I have to take a deep breath. Ever so gently, I find a way of saying, you're asking the wrong question. When I first began teaching almost 10 years ago in San Quentin in California, I began our semester with an essay called Learning to Read, an excerpt from the autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm X describes the way he would stay up late in his prison cell reading the dictionary, starting with the word aardvark and going all the way through to the end of the alphabet. It's a beautiful essay and one I think we should all read, but I want to talk about the assumption I made when I assigned it. My decision was based on an image I had in my mind of what a prisoner was, of what a prisoner would like, of what a prisoner would find intellectually engaging. My assumption, and one that I think is still at the heart of so much prisoner education, was that the most crucial aspect of any one of my students' identities was his life history and his present life circumstance as an incarcerated person. What if this just weren't true? Flash forward to last summer. Here at this prison, we decided to teach Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice as our summer reading book. When I told this to an acquaintance on the outside, she said she couldn't believe that this population could possibly relate to that novel. A domestic novel of manners set in 19th century England. The content would be so far outside of my students' experience, it would be completely irrelevant to them. I had to posit her words, because this time, to me, her words suggested a willingness to limit the potential intellectual capacity of our students based on who she imagined them to be. And I suddenly saw this danger of making curriculum decisions. I saw the way it could recreate the terms of our students' confinement. My vision for my students is that they be taken seriously as academics, that no one question them otherwise. and that their identities as students become a way for them to rupture the bounds of the selves they thought they knew. What does it mean to begin to direct our attention away from our life histories? In addition to teaching writing, I also teach Iyengar yoga, a method of yoga known for its demanding discipline and known for the rigor of its method. Being in the presence of my own teacher has taught me more than I know about what it means to be a teacher or a student in any context. Whatever change she has helped nurture in me has nothing to do with her knowing the details of my life history. When I am in her presence, we are completely absorbed in the practice at hand. She instructs and I follow. No time for stories. Press down with the outer heel, lift the inner arch away from the floor, extend your arms at your side, lift the chest up. My attention is so complete that I can be no one else in these moments. I am not the person I was when I walked in the room. I'm not the person I will be after. In fact, completely devoted to the work at hand, the small selves we were outside the practice room seem to be raised up, and we are both more than and other than we were before. Back to my classroom here at the prison. Last term, I taught the work of a visual artist called Kara Walker. Walker is known for her provocative cut paper silhouettes. Her silhouettes depict stereotypical representations of slaves, and they are not easy for anyone to look at. That week, my entire class was tense. My students, normally enthusiastic, were disturbed and silent. Boldly displayed on our classroom walls, these images had clearly evoked old traumas and generated conflict among a group I knew to be supportive of one another. So those of you in the audience who teach can imagine how I felt in this moment. My mind raced with what I should have done differently. But the next week, my students were 10 steps ahead of me. They spoke with eloquence and honesty about our discomfort. They were unafraid of our discomfort. They spoke of the risks and complexities of viewing such images in a mixed-race classroom. They also spoke of their anger and confusion. But most importantly, they spoke of the way having such difficult discussions can actually lead us to grow together as a community. They spoke of the education that still must be done. Suddenly, our classroom was no longer about us as individuals. It was both bigger and more complicated than any of our own life stories. I have watched as many well-meaning volunteers and prisoner advocates have encouraged women in this facility to tell the stories of their pasts. And I will be the first to say we should all tell and share our own stories. But that is not my job here. My business is higher education. My business is the fact that one day, many of my students will be sitting in a classroom at the University of Washington. Which means, when we have 25 minutes to read a poem, or look at an essay, or brainstorm paper topics, we do just that. To do anything else would suggest that I'm not taking my students seriously as students, or that I'm not taking myself seriously as a teacher. I fantasize that one day I'll tell someone I teach writing in a women's prison, and they'll ask the question I actually want to answer. It'll be a question that's about the work my students and I do together in here. A question something along the lines of, how are their thesis statements coming along? To whomever asks, I identify my students by their ideas rather than their pasts. The one who showed me that images of dogs and cats in Virginia Woolf's essay actually helps her make a feminist argument. The one who argued that an easily forgotten scene of a carnival in a Toni Morrison novel has everything to say about the way we perform roles in our daily life. The one who noticed that the lyric I in a Langston Hughes poem was not the voice of a solitary speaker, but that of an entire people calling out in longing and pain. It is the right and privilege of any student that when she walks through the classroom door, she ceases to be the person she was on the other side. She has a golden ticket, a free pass for 90 minutes or 2 hours to be someone she's never been before. Who are we to take away that possibility? Thank you.